I have a question for you. Have you ever tried to plan the absolute perfect Saturday?
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
You know the drill, right? You map it out minute by minute. 9:0 a.m., leave the house. 9:30, farmer's market. 10:15, brunch. It's supposed to be this, perfect, efficient line from one good thing to the next.
Supposed to be. But I'm guessing reality had a different opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Reality decided to throw in a dead car battery, a closed highway ramp, and then to top it all off, it started raining sideways while I was trying to parallel park.
Of course.
The point is, I had a plan, but the world it didn't care. I didn't end up where I wanted to go.
That frustration you felt, that is the fundamental problem of, well, uncertainty. For us, it's annoying. For a classical computer algorithm that loves certainty, it's crippling.
And that is exactly where we're going today. We're looking at how artificial intelligence handles that kind of messiness.
Right.
We're doing a deep dive into Markov Decision Processes.
Or MDPs for short. It's a really powerful framework. And for this, we're drawing from a lecture module by Dr. Reza Abdali at California State University Channel Islands, which was adapted from the AI curriculum over at UC Berkeley.
So the mission for this deep dive is what? To figure out how a robot, or an agent, I guess is the lingo, how it makes smart decisions when the world is, slippery and chaotic.
That's a great way to put it. We're moving from simple search problems, where you just find a path on a map.
Like my brunch plan.
Exactly. To non-deterministic search, where you have to manage risk and probability and the very real chance that your actions just fail.
Okay, so if we're building a simulation of this messy world for an AI, what are the building blocks? I saw the slides break it down into 4 main parts.
Right. To define an MDP, you have to define the world. First, you need S, which is the set of states.
So every possible situation the agent can be in, like I'm at home, I'm at the market, or I'm stranded on the side of the road.
Perfect. Next, you have A, the set of actions. What can you actually do?
Turn left, turn right, call a tow truck.
Exactly.
Okay, states and actions. That seems pretty standard for any program, really.
Here is where the uncertainty kicks in. The third component is T, the transition function.
Okay.
In a simple video game, if you press up, you go up, 100%. But in an MDP, the transition function defines the probability that an action leads to a specific state.
So go north isn't a command anymore. It's more of a suggestion.
I like that.
Like, I would very much like to go north, please, but the world says, well, there's an 80% chance you go north, but maybe a 20% chance you slide sideways into a ditch.
That is it, exactly. You no longer control the outcome, you only control your choice.
Wow.
And finally, the fourth component is R, the reward function. This is the feedback. It tells the agent, good job, you get plus 10 points. Or, that was a disaster, you get negative 100.
States, actions, transitions, rewards.
Okay.
Okay. But we skipped a word in the title. Why Markov? Is that the person who invented uncertainty?
Not quite. Andrei Markov. He was a Russian mathematician, early 20th century, and the Markov property is the absolute core of this.
And that is?
It states that the future depends only on the current state, not on the history of how you got there.
Wait, so the robot has amnesia?
In a way, yeah. It means the robot doesn't hold grudges. It doesn't matter if you spent 3 hours getting lost before you arrived at an intersection.
Right.
All that matters mathematically is that you are at the intersection now. The best decision depends only on where you are, not on the baggage of your past.
That sounds weirdly liberating, actually.
It simplifies the math enormously. I mean, can you imagine if we had to remember the entire history of every step to make one decision? We'd never calculate anything.
Fair point. Okay, so to see this in action, the source material uses this example called Grid World. It looks kind of like an old school video game.
Grid World is the classic Hello World for this whole topic. So imagine a simple, say, 3x4 grid. You've got a little robot agent.
Okay.
There are walls blocking some squares. And in the top right corner, there's a blue diamond. That's a big reward, a +1.
That's the goal.
But right below that diamond, there's a pit of fire. That's a reward of -1.
The do not touch zone. Got it.
And sticking to our theme of messy reality, the movement is noisy. The slides lay out a very specific probability model. We call it the 8-0-10-10 rule.
Okay, walk me through that.
So when the robot chooses to move north, the environment kind of rolls the dice. 80% of the time, the robot actually moves north. It works.
Okay, decent odds.
But 10% of the time, it slips and moves west to the left.
Uh-oh.
And the other 10% of the time, it slips and moves east to the right.
Hold on. So I could be standing right next to that pit of fire trying to move away from it, and the noise could just slide me right into it.
That is the danger. And if you try to move into a wall, you just bounce off and stay put. So the agent can't just memorize a sequence. It can't have a pre-planned dance routine.
Because it'll end up in the fire.
Exactly.
That sounds incredibly stressful for a little robot.
It gets even more complex.
Yeah.
We also have to talk about something called the living reward.
Living reward sounds positive, like you get a bonus just for showing up.
You'd think so, but it's usually a cost of living. The slides show examples where every single step the robot takes costs a small amount, like -0.01 or -0.03.
So just existing costs points.
Think of it like burning fuel, or your phone's battery life ticking down. If every step is a little bit painful to your score, what does that do to your behavior?
It would make me impatient. I'd want to get to the diamond as fast as possible to stop the bleeding.
It creates urgency. If the living reward was 0, the robot might just wander around safely forever, too scared of the pit to do anything. But if it's negative, it forces the agent to take some risks.
The source material had this chart that showed how the robot's personality changes based on this number. This is my favorite part. If the living reward is just a little negative, the robot takes the long, safe route around the pit.
Right. It wants to finish, but it values safety above all.
But if the living reward is really negative, like -2.0 points per step, the robot does something insane.
What does it do?
It dives straight into the pit of fire.
Now think about the math. The pit is Markov 1.0. Just walking one step costs -2.0.
Oh, wow. So taking a single step is literally more painful than death.
It's the suicide policy. The agent calculates that a quick, painful end is mathematically better than a long, drawn-out existence of burning all its fuel.
That is dark. And also brilliant. It shows you have to be so careful how you set up these rewards for an AI.
It proves that bad behavior can actually be optimal behavior if your incentives are all wrong.
So because the floor is slippery and time is money, we can't just make a simple list of directions. This brings us to the difference between a plan and a policy.
This is a crucial distinction. In a normal maze, you make a plan. Go north, then east, then east. It's just a blank sequence.
But here, if I try that and step 1 fails, if I slip west instead of going north, my whole plan is useless. My second instruction is now totally wrong.
You might be driving yourself into a wall. A plan is fragile. An MDP requires a policy, which we write as the Greek letter pi.
And a policy isn't a sequence of moves.
No, it's a universal map. It creates a rule for every single square on the grid.
So it's like a comprehensive survival guide. It says, if you find yourself in square A, try to go north. But hey, if you accidentally slip and end up in square B, don't panic. Here is the new instruction for that square.
It turns the robot into a reflex agent. It doesn't need to stop and replan when things go wrong. It just looks at its policy and acts. And the goal is to find the optimal policy, or APM.
The map that gives you the best possible score in the long run.
Exactly.
Speaking of risks and scores, the lecture uses another example, the racing car.
Yeah, this one's great for showing the trade-off between big rewards and catastrophic failure.
So you've got a self-driving race car. It has 3 states: cool, warm, and overheated.
Right?
And 2 actions, slow or fast.
Going slow is safe. You get a steady reward, maybe +1 for distance, and your engine stays cool. But, you don't win races by driving slow.
So you choose fast. That gives you a double reward +2, but there's a catch.
There's always a catch. The transition function. If you go fast, there's a probability the engine heats up. It goes from cool to warm. And if it's already warm and you push it,
it hits overheated.
And in this model, overheated is an absorbing state.
Which is just a polite way of saying the car's engine exploded.
Game over. No more rewards, ever. So the AI has to constantly make this gamble. Is the double reward of speeding worth the risk of blowing up the engine and getting 0 forever?
That calculation depends a lot on how long the race is. Which brings us to a part of the lecture that really made my head hurt a bit. Infinite utilities. What happens if the race never, ever ends?
Yeah, this is a fun one. If the robot lives forever and just keeps getting +1 point every turn, its total score goes to infinity. The math completely breaks down.
Because you can't compare one infinity to another, so how do we fix that?
We introduce a concept called discounting, represented by the Greek letter gamma.
Okay.
We basically decide that rewards we get in the future are worth less than rewards we get right now.
Wait, hold on. Isn't that just cheating? You're just arbitrarily shrinking the numbers so your equation doesn't break.
It feels like a hack, doesn't it? But there are 2 really good reasons for it. One is purely mathematical. By multiplying future rewards by a number less than 1, like 0.9, the infinite sum actually converges to a real finite number. It stops the math from exploding.
Okay, so it saves the calculator. What's the other reason?
It's about uncertainty. In the real world, forever doesn't actually exist. The robot might break, the race could be canceled. A reward promised 100 steps from now is inherently risky because you might not be around to collect it.
So discounting is basically the robot saying a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. I'll take the points now because I don't know if I'll even be here tomorrow.
Precisely. If your gamma is 0.5, a reward of 10 today is worth 10, but that same reward tomorrow is only worth 5. It mathematically encodes impatience. Or maybe realism.
So we have the map, the slippery movement, the rewards, this discount factor. How does the robot actually build that policy map? How does it figure out which arrows to draw?
Well, there are two main algorithms. The first one is called value iteration.
Okay, the slides mentioned the Bellman equation here. It sounded like a ripple effect.
The ripple metaphor is a great way to picture it. So imagine every square on the grid starts with a value of 0, total ignorance.
Right.
The robot stands in one square and it just looks one step ahead at its neighbors. It asks, if I try to go north, where could I land?
Okay, 80% here, 10% there, 10% over there.
And it averages the values of those destination squares, adds in any immediate reward, and calculates a new, better estimate for the square it's standing on.
So I'm updating my own value based on the potential future value of my neighbors.
Yes. And you do this for every single square on the grid, over and over again. In the first pass, only the squares right next to the diamond get a positive score.
And in the next round, the squares next to those squares see that high value and update themselves.
And that's your ripple. The goodness propagates out from the diamond, and the badness propagates out from the fire pit. Eventually, the numbers stop changing much. They converge.
And then you have the true value of every spot on the map,
But there is a second method, right? Policy iteration.
which is often faster.
Yeah, value iteration can be slow because you're constantly recalculating everything from scratch. Policy iteration splits the job into 2 steps that you just repeat.
Step 1.
Policy evaluation. You just pick a policy at random, let's say always go north, and you calculate the score for that specific policy. You're not looking for the best move yet, you're just grading your current strategy.
Okay, and step 2.
Policy improvement. Now you look at those scores and you ask, hey, in this one square, my policy says go north. But looking at the numbers, going east seems way better, so you update just that one arrow in your policy.
And then you go back to step 1 and evaluate this new, slightly better policy.
You just flip back and forth. Evaluate, improve, evaluate, improve. It usually finds the optimal policy much, much faster.
Okay, I'm with you on finding the values. But I have a practical complaint here. Let's say I've run the algorithm. I know square A has a value of 10, square B has a value of 8.
That sounds useful.
It is. But if I'm the robot standing in square A, I still have to do all that math every time I move. I have to say, okay, if I try to go north, I have an 80% chance of landing on B, so that's 0.8 times 8. I have to pull out my calculator for every single step. Can't we just pre-calculate the answer?
You have just hit on the exact reason we have Q values.
I knew there was a reason for that slide.
The standard value, which we call V is C2, just tells you being in this state is good. It's like standing outside a restaurant and knowing it has 5 stars. That doesn't tell you what to order.
Right.
A Q value is more specific. It measures the value of a Q state, which is a pair, a state, and an action.
So a Q is this restaurant is 5 stars. It's ordering the steak at this restaurant is 5 stars.
And ordering the salad is 2 stars.
That is so much better.
Yeah.
I don't need to do any math. I just look at the menu. Steak is 5, salad is 2. I pick the steak.
That is the power of Q values. It stores all that probability math, the expect-to-max calculation inside the value itself. The agent doesn't need to think anymore. It just picks the action with the highest Q value.
It's the ultimate cheat sheet.
It really is. And this concept is absolutely foundational. If you've heard of Q learning in modern AI, this is where it all begins.
Wow. So we've gone from a road trip ruined by traffic to a robot that literally learns to navigate a world that is actively trying to slide it into a fire pit.
We've seen that when you can't control the outcome, you shouldn't rely on a rigid plan. You need a flexible policy.
We learned that just living costs energy, and that drives urgency. You have to take risks sometimes because standing still is too expensive.
And we learned that to make the math work, we have to admit that we care more about today than we do about next year.
Which brings us to the end. I want to circle back to something you mentioned about those infinite utilities.
Ah, the problem of the game that never ends.
We solved it by discounting the future. But the slides had this little philosophical nugget in there. They imply that without discounting or without a terminal state, like a game over screen decision-making, it falls apart.
It does make you wonder, if we lived forever, and if we valued a moment 1,000,000 years from now exactly the same as this moment right now, would we ever get off the couch?
Probably not. Why do something now if later is just as good?
The math suggests that our constraints, our mortality, our impatience, our personal discount factor, are actually the engine of our agency. We act because time is running out.
So the robot is just like us. It's rushing for that diamond because it knows its battery won't last forever.
In the end, it's the constraints that give the rewards their meaning.
Well, my battery's definitely draining, and I have a very high discount factor for lunch right now.
Then you should probably execute your optimal policy and go find some food.
That is the plan, or I should say, the policy. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into Markov decision processes.
Until next time.